I feel like I'm trapped. And it's pretty much life or death at this point.
James L.B. Bonner was once celebrated as one of the most inspiring stars of My 600-Pound Life. Viewers saw his courage, his humor, and his determination to fight back against a body that seemed determined to hold him down.
After coming home from seeing Dr. Now, I cleaned all the bad food out from the house, and I got rid of the beer. I drank some of it because I couldn't waste it, but it's gone now, and I'm sticking to the diet.
But behind the cameras, a very different story was unfolding, one filled with struggles few ever saw. So what really happened to LB once the spotlight faded? Life in the spotlight. When audiences first met James L.B. Bonner on My 600-Pound Life, he was only 29 years old, yet already facing challenges most people could hardly imagine. At over 600 pounds and with one leg lost to a devastating accident, his daily existence was a battle between determination and despair. The show opened a window into his reality, and for many viewers, it was shocking to see how quickly hope and hopelessness could collide in one man's life. LB lived in his parents' garage in South Carolina, a space that had become both a refuge and a prison. With his prosthetic leg straining under his massive weight, every step felt like a struggle. Simple tasks, walking to the bathroom, balancing long enough to put on the liner of his prosthesis, or even leaving the house, were exhausting. He confessed that even brushing his teeth could leave him drenched in sweat. These everyday realities painted a picture of how far his body had betrayed him and how much effort it would take to reclaim his life. At the center of his world was his mother. She cooked, cleaned, washed his laundry, and even nudged him to leave the house when he wanted nothing more than to hide from the world. She loved her son fiercely, but her devotion also became enabling. At the grocery store, she filled the cart with soda, pizza pockets, and snack cakes, even while lamenting that she knew it was hurting him. For LB, food was more than nourishment. It was comfort, escape, and sometimes the only thing that made him feel alive. That complicated relationship with food, paired with a mother who could not bring herself to say no, added fuel to the fire he was desperately trying to control. The show revealed his moments of humor too. LB joked about being a 6'4" bald pirate because of his prosthetic leg, a self-deprecating remark that masked deeper insecurities. Yet behind those quips, viewers could sense the pain of being stared at in public, the anxiety of traveling, and the crushing fear of becoming completely immobile if his prosthetic gave out. He was already nearing that point. His leg was showing cracks from the sheer strain, and he knew that if it failed, he might never walk again. It was this mix of frustration and determination that pushed him to take a leap of faith. Alongside his mother, LB traveled to Houston, Texas, to meet the doctor known for tackling the most extreme weight loss cases, Dr. Yunan Nozaradon. The journey itself was filled with anxiety. LB worried about fitting into plane seats, about strangers staring, and about whether he had the strength to survive the trip. But reaching Houston marked a turning point. This was his shot to change everything. When LB stepped on the scale at Dr. Nozaradon's clinic, the number revealed 642 pounds. Seeing it spelled out in front of him was crushing. He admitted he felt worthless, as though the number confirmed every fear he carried inside. Yet Dr. Nozaradon did not sugarcoat the truth. If LB kept going down the same path, he would soon be immobile and perhaps not even survive into his mid-30s. The solution was clear but daunting: a strict 1,200-calorie diet, complete elimination of alcohol, and steady physical activity despite the pain of his prosthetic. The initial weeks were rough. LB struggled to resist old habits. After discouraging news about his prosthetic, he found himself ordering fast food again, falling into the comfort of burgers and chicken fries. But he also showed resilience. He cleaned out his home, got rid of alcohol, and began exercising in his sister's swimming pool to ease pressure on his joints. Progress was slow, but real. Within weeks, he shed nearly 50 pounds. Though he missed the goal by 2 pounds, his effort convinced Dr. Nozaradon that he was ready for weight loss surgery. This was the moment when LB became a fan favorite. Viewers admired his determination, his openness about the struggle, and the vulnerability he showed on camera. Moving to Texas for the program meant leaving much of his family behind, yet he embraced the challenge. Despite arguments with his mother, despite fear and exhaustion, he clung to hope. For many, watching him take control of his life was deeply inspiring. Here was a man with every reason to give up, yet still fighting for a better tomorrow. As his surgery date approached, anticipation grew. LB spoke openly about wanting to make his family proud, about needing to reclaim his independence, and about finally believing that change was possible. For a brief moment, it seemed like the darkness was giving way to light. But the journey was only beginning, and the shadows from his past were never far behind. To understand the depth of LB's struggle, we need to step back before the cameras, before the surgery, and before the fame. His fight with food and self-worth began long before Houston. It began in childhood, in family kitchens, and in the quiet moments of grief that shaped the man he would become. Early life and struggles. Long before the cameras of My 600-Pound Life ever entered his world, James L.B. Bonner's story had already been written in the small moments of his childhood. Born in South Carolina, he was adopted as an infant by a family who had already raised 3 daughters but longed for a son. For them, adopting LB was a blessing, the fulfillment of a dream. His father proudly called him his little buddy, a nickname that stayed with him throughout his life and in time became the initials everyone knew him by. Being the only boy in the family came with its own pressures. From the start, expectations weighed heavily on him. His father wanted a son who would carry on the Bonner name, someone who could be strong, dependable, and capable. The whole extended family seemed invested in raising him, and while that created a circle of love, it also meant LB felt the constant presence of watchful eyes. Every triumph or failure seemed magnified. He was not just a child growing up, he was the boy expected to fulfill a dream. Food entered the picture early. When LB visited his aunt and uncle, who often looked after him, he was showered with affection in the form of snacks. Cabinets full of cakes, beef sticks, and treats became symbols of comfort and love. If he asked for ice cream late at night, his aunt would gladly get up and prepare it for him. Over time, food became more than nourishment. It became an emotional anchor. To young LB, eating meant safety, warmth, and reassurance. What he did not know then was that this connection between food and comfort would one day evolve into a consuming dependency. By the age of 8, his weight had already ballooned to 150 pounds. At 12, he reached 200 pounds. By then, he was struggling to participate in ordinary childhood activities. When his parents tried to sign him up for football as a child, he was too heavy to qualify. That moment, seeing disappointment on his father's face, left a scar. LB often felt he was failing to meet the expectations set for him even as a boy. Yet in high school, where weight limits no longer barred him, he finally found a place on the football field. There, his size was an advantage. He became an offensive powerhouse and was even named Offensive Player of the Year as a sophomore. For once, his weight brought him pride, and for a while it felt like he was living up to his father's hopes. But the celebration was short-lived. As he grew older, his weight continued to climb, and by 17, he was already over 400 pounds. His body began to break under the pressure, forcing him to quit football. Without the game, without the cheering crowds, he felt stripped of purpose. Soon after, he dropped out of high school entirely. The guilt of disappointing his father weighed heavier than any number on a scale. He began to drown his sorrows in food and alcohol, searching for relief from feelings of inadequacy. The downward spiral continued into his 20s. Parties, late-night eating, and drinking replaced the structure and validation that sports had once provided. His weight surged past 500 pounds, and with it came shame, anger, and self-loathing. Yet perhaps the most devastating moment of his young life came not from overeating, but from a split-second decision during what should have been a carefree weekend. At 19, LB joined friends for a four-wheeler ride. Despite his size, he wanted to prove he could still keep up, still have fun like everyone else. But the ride turned tragic. He crashed, shattering bones in his foot. Doctors attempted surgery, but the damage was too severe. A bone infection set in, leaving only one option: amputation. At just 19 years old, he lost his leg. As the years passed, his isolation grew. He spent most of his days indoors, watching television, sleeping, and eating to numb the emptiness. Family gatherings, once joyful, filled him with dread because he feared judgment. He confessed in later interviews that he sometimes believed his parents regretted adopting him, though in truth they never stopped loving him. Still, the voice in his head told him otherwise, reinforcing the idea that he was unworthy. This was the emotional backdrop against which the world eventually met him. By the time my 600-pound life arrived at his door, LB had already endured a lifetime of grief, trauma, and battles with self-worth. His story on the show was not just about shedding pounds, it was about confronting decades of pain. And while television gave the world a chance to cheer for his progress, the shadows of his past never truly left him. As LB shed pounds and gained attention, he seemed to transform before the eyes of millions. Online, he smiled, he encouraged others, and he became a beacon of hope. Yet fame has a way of hiding what is real. Behind the social media posts and public positivity, darker battles raged, battles that would ultimately lead to a heartbreaking end. The darkness behind the smile. After surgery and months of discipline under Dr. Nasruddin's program, James L.B. Bonner began to experience something he had not felt in years: momentum. The weight was coming off, his mobility was improving, and for the first time, the future looked less like a wall and more like an open road. But what truly set him apart from many cast members of My 600-Pound Life was how he embraced the spotlight once the cameras stopped rolling. On social media, LB became a star in his own right. He shared progress updates, motivational posts, and glimpses of his new life. His humor shone through just as it had on television, but now it reached a much wider audience. Fans rallied behind him, praising his courage and celebrating his weight loss milestones. For many struggling with obesity or personal battles of their own, his story was a light in the darkness. LB had gone from a man hiding in his parents' garage to someone inspiring strangers around the world. His charisma was undeniable. He had the rare ability to make people laugh even while speaking about pain. He posted selfies with captions that blended humor and encouragement, showing both vulnerability and strength. Each post garnered thousands of comments from people who saw him not just as a reality television figure, but as proof that change was possible. In many ways, he became the unofficial ambassador of hope for those fighting similar battles. One of the hardest battles for LB was maintaining sobriety. Alcohol had long been his escape from feelings of worthlessness, and even though he often spoke of giving it up, temptation was always close by. He admitted in earlier interviews that drinking gave him the confidence he otherwise lacked, a quick fix for self-doubt. Without it, he sometimes struggled to face the world. While social media celebrated his victories, his private life remained far more fragile. By 2018, he had lost a significant amount of weight and appeared healthier than ever. His journey seemed like one of the show's greatest success stories. But on the inside, darkness lingered. Friends and family later shared that he often struggled with depression, feelings of isolation, and the fear that he had let people down. Even after achieving so much, he still could not escape the sense that he was a disappointment, a belief that had followed him since childhood. In August of that year, LB posted a message online that alarmed many of his followers. It was heartfelt, almost like a farewell. He wrote about loving those around him, about wanting them to take care of one another, and about finally finding peace. Hours later, the unthinkable happened. James L.B. Bonner took his own life at just 30 years old. The news just shocked everyone. The man who had once been a beacon of hope for so many was suddenly gone, leaving behind questions that may never have clear answers. How could someone who inspired millions still feel so lost? How could the smile that lit up social media conceal such deep pain? These questions continue to echo whenever LB's story is remembered. His death was not just the loss of a young man, but a sobering reminder that transformation on the outside does not always heal the wounds on the inside. LB's passing highlighted an uncomfortable truth. Reality television can show progress, but it cannot capture the private battles of the heart. Fans saw the weight loss, the triumphs, and the humor, but they did not see the lonely nights, the doubts, or the heavy silence when the cameras stopped rolling. James L.B. Bonner's story is one of courage, pain, and the unseen struggles behind a smile. He showed the world that transformation is possible, yet reminded us that healing the heart is often harder than changing the body. His life asks us to look closer, to check on those who seem fine, and to speak openly about mental health. Because sometimes the strongest smiles hide the deepest battles, and remembering that could save a life. If you found this story powerful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more stories that truly matter.